What are your first impressions of how Bo Bichette and Jorge Polanco are adapting to their new roles?
I think this is going pretty much as expected. They've both worked extremely hard at those positions. There are nuances that they're learning. They're going to continue to learn, and it's not going to be perfect, but I'm certainly pleased with the actions they're showing, what we're seeing in their daily work, and I think we're progressing well.
You remain as optimistic as previously about Lindor being ready for opening day?
Yes, all indications we have is this is going as planned, and we would expect we have a similar level of optimism that he'll be ready for opening day.
How many will he be able to play in any spring training games, you think, before?
Sure, yeah, that would be a prerequisite. We wouldn't have his first competition be opening day. We would ensure they're at bats.
Do you think like in the Grapefruit League, or would it be maybe minor league or games?
I would expect Grapefruit League, but we haven't mapped this out yet.
Just what specific signs have you seen from Benj that tell you he's ready to make the opening day roster?
I don't think we've made that decision yet. I think Carson is having a nice camp. Similar to all of our guys, he's worked really hard. I think we've had a very work-intensive camp across the field, and Carson has participated in that in the games. We've seen what we would have expected. He's taken very competitive at bats. He's a tough out. I think he's played a nice right field. So he's done what we would expect him to do. We think he's going to be a really good player, and we'll have a difficult decision as we get towards the end of camp.
And just broadly speaking, what are some of the questions you're trying to answer before camp breaks going into the season?
Yeah, I think we have the right field question that we're going to have to answer. There's probably a bench question we're going to have to answer, and then one or two bullpen spots that we're going to have to answer. But for the most part, this is about getting our team and individual players ready for the season. I think we're doing that. I think our coaching staff has done a really nice job of making sure this is a well-run, efficient camp, and we've done that so far. And it's been good for me to see.
Not about any player specifically, but when a prospect comes up, is it different to debut on opening day versus a normal day in the season? Are the expectations any different or anything like that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think opening day is always different, and as much as I and we try to impart on players that opening day is just one day, we also recognize, and I recognize, that there's a significance to that, and players place a significance on that, and we're sensitive to that. Whether that creates more pressure, that I don't know, but I do know there's a level of importance to being on the line on opening day that exists to players.
And then talking about Benj specifically, leave opening day out of it. How confident are you that he's going to be an impactful player for you in 2026?
Well, I expect him to contribute to our team this year. There's no question about that. I think the way he has developed throughout his professional career indicates that he's reaching that level. Whether that's an opening day or not, I don't know.
Hey, David.
Hi, Tyler.
So you brought in Peralta this year. You have a lot of good, starting pitchers on that roster. But how hard has it become to figure out how you're going to fill those innings over your career in baseball? Because it feels like a lot of guys are just not built for 180 even. They might be built for 130 or 160. And how do you make the math work?
Numbers. And look, we know we need depth, and we are very cognizant of that. I think the best way to build depth is to have a farm system that continuously replenishes your pitching with young pitchers who have the ability to contribute at the major league level. And I think we are approaching that level here. We're very pleased with some of the steps that our pitching development has taken, and some of the pitchers who have come out of that over the past couple of years, and who we expect to come out of it in the future. But you're right, it's tough. It's very few guys are hitting that 180 mark year in and year out. I think there are a lot of reasons for that that probably extend beyond this specific question in press conference, but I think there are a lot of reasons for that. And the way we combat that is to try to make sure we have sufficient depth throughout the year.
Is that part of what you saw last year? I mean, you had some guys who just kind of ran out of steam at the end, and who had been really good up until that point. How do you get them through the finish line?
So last year we had the combination of injuries mid-year, and then absolutely fatigue set in for certain guys at the end. I think part of that is experience. Once you've gone through that fatigue, it may help you both physically and mentally battle it in the future. Some of it is we're constantly learning about how to train year-round, and whether there are things we can do in November, December, January that end up helping us in September and October. And that's probably an area where, as an industry, we continue to grow and get better.
When you were looking at free agent bullpen help in the offseason, what was appealing the most about Weaver to you?
There are a couple things. I think the experience of pitching in multiple roles. He's pitched at the back end of games. He's pitched multiple innings. He's thrived in both. His willingness to take the ball, that's an important part of his role on a team, and also platoon neutrality, someone who we don't feel like we necessarily have to match up against a certain handed hitter. He has the weapons and the pitches to get really all types of hitters out.
And just, his second half numbers weren't as good as his first half numbers last year. Do you just look at that as a sample size thing, or?
With relievers, there's always a sample size thing in there, and we have to be careful about that on both ends. I think sometimes we point to sample size when the surface line numbers aren't great, but we conveniently forget the sample size when the surface line numbers are great. So there's always the sample size part. I think with Luke, there's probably also some things that he recognizes, and we recognize that he can get back to and do a little bit better, and we're very confident he can.
Just what stood out to you this spring about the clubhouse culture?
I think guys are getting after it, and that's been good to see. We have a very focused group in there. As I mentioned earlier, the work has been really quality on the field, and that's something you don't see every spring. I think we have a group that is actively trying to get better every single day, and that can be somewhat unique with a team full of veterans. That's not often the case. A lot of times you come to spring training with a veteran team, and everyone's really just got opening day circled and is counting down the days to opening day. And I think what we felt here is guys are taking every single day seriously. They're going out, they're getting their work in. They're working very well with our coaching staff, and it's been really good to see.
Outside of Benj, what have you seen from some of the other younger guys, whether it be an AJ Ewing, a Jack Weninger, and tying into that, has their progression over the course of the spring been in line with what you've expected from those guys?
And Andy Green actually and I were talking about this earlier today, how well our younger players have fit in our major league camp, not only in terms of the competitiveness on the field, but how they've adjusted within our major league clubhouse, how they've worked with our veterans. It's been really encouraging to see. And if we're doing our jobs well, we should have this every single year. We should have good young players in major league camp every single year. And we have it. It's been good to see. And I really think all of those guys have performed well in camp, have handled themselves well, have handled themselves with maturity. And it speaks well to where they're headed.
You look, with the potential of Benj and adding Robert, I mean, do you look at your outfield defense as something that can be really elite this year?
We expect to be a good defensive club across the diamond, and I certainly think in the outfield we have a chance to be much improved from last year.
Is it just the raw athleticism that you brought in, and obviously bringing in Kai Correa too to help with that? Is it just a mixture?
Probably a combination of all the above. It's I think we have some very talented defenders on the team. Tyrone Taylor, who we haven't talked about yet, is also a really talented defender. We're going to have talented defenders in AAA who at points are going to come up and and help our major league team. And I think everyone in our clubhouse knows we're emphasizing defense, and it's important, and we expect a similar level of work there to what we're putting in on the offensive side of the ball.
Broadly speaking, this is a kind of a fertile time for extensions the next couple of weeks across the industry. Do you sense, whether for you guys or anyone else, that there's that labor uncertainty plays into teams' willingness to do extensions this year versus others?
Broadly speaking, haven't really given that much thought and don't get a sense much from around the industry as to how teams are thinking about that. Thank you.